Landmark Media Investments was a media holding company owned by Tom Crosby and his father Ted Crosby with Irish newspaper, radio, and digital investments. Their ownership was via Renbury Limited. Landmark Media Investments was established in February 2013 and acquired several assets of Thomas Crosby Holdings in March 2013. Landmark Media Investments sold all their media interests to the Irish Times in July 2018. Employee numbers and job cuts. Landmark Media Investments employed 554 as at March 2013. Employee numbers were reduced to around 500 as at April 2014. The number of staff employed subsequently fell to around 420. Staff levels were 414 as at December 31, 2017. In April 2014, Landmark Media Investments announced 55 to 60 job cuts. The job cuts were mainly caused because of efficiencies due to the centralization of activities in Cork. In June 2015, further job cuts occurred at the Roscommon Herald. Legal cases. Landmark Media Investments, as occupiers of a building in Cork, were sued by Kilquane in April 2013. Although the case was against Examiner Publications Ltd., Landmark Media Investments occupied the building. Kilquane wanted Landmark Media Investments to vacate the building after rent was allegedly not paid on the building for 2 years. The case had a full hearing on May 8, 2013. On May 16, 2013, Landmark Media Investments were given a High Court order to vacate their premises. The floors occupied were vacated. The building was put up for sale, by the owners, in September 2016. Landmark Media Investments were sued by Webprint Concepts in March 2013. Webprint Concepts also sued Thomas Crosby Holdings. Both were sued over breach of contract. Judge Peter Kelly would only move the case onwards to the commercial court if Webprint supplying evidence of funds to cover the case. On July 3, 2014, Landmark Media Investments, Thomas Crosby Holdings and Post Publications Ltd. were involved in an unfair dismissal lawsuit. In February 2015, the verdict, against Post Publications, was appealed. In July 2017, Landmark Media Digital, who are owned by Landmark Media Investments, and who publish breakingnews.ie, were taken to the Labour Court by the National Union of Journalists NUJ. The NUJ alleged that Landmark Media Investments are underpaying journalists and subjecting them to unsocial hours without compensation. Bid for Sunday Business Post. Landmark Media Investments submitted a basic proposal to buy the Sunday Business Post, including funding facilities to the newspaper's Examiner on March 29, 2013, as did other potential bidders. Landmark Media Investments was expected to form a joint venture with the Irish Times if it succeeded. It was reported on April 28, 2013, that Landmark Media Investments have pulled out of the bidding for the Sunday Business Post. Landmark Media Investments were not successful in their bid for the Sunday Business Post. Bid 102-103 license renewal. The Broadcasting Authority of Ireland submitted tenders for the renewal of radio licenses in 2013. Bid 102-103, who are owned by Landmark Media Investments, were up against Power FM for the same license. On May 2, 2013, the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland opened up the license renewal process to a competitive licensing process with 2 bidders remaining for the license that Landmark Media currently hold. Bid 102-103 was the sole bidder for the license and have signed an agreement with the BAI for 10 more years of broadcasting. Radio licenses. After Thomas Crosby Holdings went into receivership, Landmark Media Investments required some approvals to gain ownership of the former Thomas Crosby Holdings radio assets. On January 10, 2014, the Competition Authority cleared, with proposals, the acquisition by Sappho Limited, who are 100% owned by Landmark Media Investments, of sole control of WKWFN Limited Bid 102-103 and Southeast Broadcasting Company Limited WLRFM in joint control of Site Ridge Limited Red FM. ABC exit. ABC published newspaper circulation figures on a biannual basis for Irish newspapers. Landmark Media Investment newspapers received ABC circulation statistics for 2012, with most ABC circulation statistics showing declines. In 2013, Landmark Media Investments pulled the majority of their newspapers from the ABC circulation statistics. financial accounts. In December 2014, Landmark Media Investments published their 2013 accounts. There was a $700,000 loss for the period. There was a bank loan of $19.5 million carried over from Thomas Crosby Holdings. There was a further $1 million loan from its parent company, Renbury Ltd. A deficit of $2.8 million relating to the legacy TCH pension scheme will be reflected in the 2014 accounts. The directors believe that there is enough resources for 2014. In the Wexford Echo liquidation court case, which took place in June 2017, it was revealed that debt owed to AIB from Landmark Media Investments stood at $16.5 million. This is not total debt, rather just debt owed to AIB. In October 2017, Landmark Media Investments published their 2014 accounts. The accounts, which cover 2015, show that Landmark has recorded an impairment charge of $14.7 million as it prepares for the sale. This led to a $14.9 million loss. An offer was made by this prospective purchaser, and negotiations including due diligence process are currently ongoing to finalize the terms of the sale, the directors said in their report. Benchwarmers. In mid-2015, Landmark Media Investments sought to acquire Benchwarmers.ie. Benchwarmers.ie is a sports and banter site. The acquisition was subject to approval by the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission (CCPC). In May 2017, the CCPC cleared the proposal. Red FM Loan. Landmark Media Investments' fully owned subsidiary called Sappho Limited. Sappho Ltd owns 17% of SiteRidge Limited. SiteRidge Ltd owned Red FM. Sappho Ltd provided a loan of $1.3 million to Red FM. The loan was an interest-free loan. SiteRidge Ltd made a loss in 2014. 2017 Wexford Echo Limited liquidation. On June 29, 2017, it was reported that a liquidator had been appointed to Wexford Echo Limited, who are owned by Landmark Media Investments, and published the Wexford Echo, Gorey Echo, New Ross Echo and the Enniscorthy The Echo. Wallace, an insolvency practitioner at KPMG, has been appointed as liquidator and is trying to find a buyer. The Waterford News and Star and the Nationalist and Leinster Times are also affected because Wexford Echo Limited provides sub-editing for these titles. On July 1, 2017, it was reported that Kevin Mitchell, who owns Datascope, was a potential buyer. On July 9, 2017, it was reported that Wexford Echo Limited had lost $187,000 in 2015, lost $253,000 in 2016 and lost $131,000 from January 2017 to May 2017. Wexford Echo newspapers owed $525,000 to AIB and $524,000 to Landmark Media Investments as a liquidation point. On August 19, 2017, it was reported that most staff had been made redundant. 2017/2018 sale to Irish Times. In February 2017, it was reported that Landmark Media Investments had appointed KPMG. A range of options were being considered, including an independent news and media link with the Irish Examiner. In March 2017, it was reported that the Irish Times may bid for the Irish Examiner. On April 16, 2017, it was reported that both the Irish Times and Independent News Media had entered the sales process for the Irish Examiner and signed non-disclosure agreements. On April 17, 2017, Independent News Media stated that they were not in talks to acquire the Irish Examiner. The Irish Independent reported that the Irish Times is understood to be actively engaged with the team hired to find a buyer for the paper. On May 29, 2017, it was reported that both Key Capital and the Irish Times are considering a bid to acquire the Irish Examiner. It was also reported that Iconic Newspapers may acquire the Landmark Media Investments regional titles, and the PwC and AIB are in discussions about a debt restructure. On July 1, 2017, it was reported that Iconic Newspapers, Trinity Mirror, and Independent News Media were all interested in acquiring the remaining regional newspapers. On August 20, 2017, it was reported that Landmark Media Investments had ceased making payments into the Irish Examiner pension scheme. The scheme is to be wound up. On August 20, 2017, it was also reported that the Irish Times was the likely purchaser of Irish Examiner and a deal was likely to be announced in Q4 2017. On August 27, 2017, it was reported that the Irish Times were in pole position to acquire the Irish Examiner. It was also reported that iconic newspapers were likely to acquire the Landmark Media Investments regional titles. It was also reported that Rupert Murdoch's Wireless Group is interested in acquiring Landmark Media Investments radio assets. On September 17, 2017, it was reported that the Irish Times purchase of the Irish Examiner had been agreed in principle, but costs, staffing and debt apportionment were still be agreed. On September 24, 2017, it was reported that the sale of the Irish Examiner to the Irish Times will occur first. Thereafter, iconic newspapers will acquire regional titles. It was also reported that staff were concerned about job losses. On October 17, 2017, Landmark Media Investments confirmed that the sale of the group was under negotiation. On December 6, 2017, Landmark Media Investments confirmed that all newspaper, radio, and website interests are to be sold to the Irish Times subject to regulatory approvals. AIB have taken a debt write-down as part of the sale. On March 22, 2018, the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission (CCPC) announced their decision to carry out a Phase 2 investigation into the proposed transaction, whereby the Irish Times would acquire sole control of the Irish Examiner. The CCPC must make a final decision on the proposed transaction on or before August 1, 2018, although this deadline may change if the CCPC issues a requirement for information. On April 24, 2018, the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission (CCPC) cleared the Irish Times deal to buy Landmark Media Investments. Following the issuing of the CCPC's determination, the parties must submit a separate notification to the Minister for Communications, Climate Action, and Environment. On June 15, 2018, the Minister for Communications, Climate Action, and the Environment, Denis Naughton, approved the proposed transaction. The BAI have also approved the radio station purchases. Legal and compliance steps are required next before the deal can close. On July 10, 2018, the acquisition was complete. The Irish Times owned the media investments from the state. The Crosby family no longer owned the media assets. Former newspaper investments. Irish Examiner sold to the Irish Times. Evening Echo sold to the Irish Times. Roscommon Herald sold to the Irish Times. Western People sold to the Irish Times. The Waterford News Star sold to the Irish Times. Carlow Nationalist sold to the Irish Times. Kildare Nationalist sold to the Irish Times. Leroy's Nationalist sold to the Irish Times. Wexford Echo Liquidator appointed in June 2017. Gorey Echo Liquidator appointed in June 2017. Enniscorthy the Echo Liquidator appointed in June 2017. New Ross Echo Liquidator appointed in June 2017. Former radio investments. Bede 102 to 103 75% ownership sold to the Irish Times. WLR-FM 75% ownership sold to the Irish Times. Red FM 17% ownership sold to the Irish Times. Former digital investments. RecreateIreland.com sold to the Irish Times. BreakingNews.ie sold to the Irish Times. Benchwarmers.ie sold to the Irish Times.